of Love show sponsored by the Dee Dee Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show sponsored by the Dee Dee Jackson Foundation. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. My name is TJ Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Taj Jackson.
What's up, T?
What is going on, Mr. Taj?
Nada mucho. I'm all comfortable.
You look very comfortable. For anyone who is watching right now, yes, we are live on YouTube and Facebook. You may also be listening to us on a replay on the podcast. Yes, on all your major podcast platforms, we are there. Go check us out if you usually are watching us or usually catch us on YouTube or Facebook, because podcasts are growing and they're an easy way to consume what we are talking about. So make sure to check Dee Dee Jackson Foundation Power of Love show on your local podcast if you're a podcast listener. We are not, here's the disclaimer, we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it, and we have learned from it. We like to share our opinions and in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you may be going through. Saying that, if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please, please, please do not just rely on us. Now, I have no idea what show number this is. This is in the mid to high 200s. It's just incredible. We've done so many of these shows. And oftentimes we get asked, how can people support our foundation? Well, the best thing I think you could do is go to www.ddjf.org to learn more about us and then share it with your community, with your friends. Make sure to follow us on all the social platforms, but also if you can, try to make a donation, because since we are a 501c3 foundation, it is a tax deduction if you're here in the States, but also it helps us put together programs for kids who need it. We have a Music Hills program that helps people get through any difficult moments they are going through music. It's a very healthy and safe way for kids to be able to be emotional. Yep. And then we also do things like we did last week, which we haven't yet talked about, Taj, because it hasn't been a full week. And that is our Dinner for a Cause. We did a Dinner for a Cause for a special lady, Amelia Green, who has been on our show several times. And it was such a magical night. We raised money for her, but I think more importantly, we made her feel love in a way I don't think she was expecting. So Taj, I'm going to ask you a quick question about that real quick. What is it? Just give me a takeaway from that night. We could talk about a takeaway, or you could talk about why that night is important. Just something. I would love to know.
Well, I think the night, first of all, is important because it shows support in that way. And for me, walking into the restaurant, where we hosted it, and just seeing Amelia's face light up in that way. And then, because she did say that she was gonna give us a hug when she saw us in person, because we've only seen her from these podcasts, but just seeing her face light up and seeing her smile throughout the night was, so rewarding in that way. Because for me, loss in general, the devastating aspect of it is when you feel alone, or you feel like you're going on this journey alone in that way. And to see the support and love that she got really made me smile. And I was very happy for that night in terms of how it went. Of course, I didn't dress up, you were a little dressed, but I don't dress up, but still getting out of the house for me is like a chore and stuff like that. But for Amelia, it was so worth it, and she deserved every bit of it.
The one thing I also want to say is a special thank you to everyone who helped us put together the magical night. I'll lead off with our entire board. People don't think it's just Taj and I who are the entire foundation. We have an incredible team of board members who sacrifice a lot help us. No one is paid from our board, so everything we receive, we put,
including us.
everything we receive, we put back into our programs and to help others. So first and foremost, I want to thank our board, but I also want to thank all of you. So many people who have told us about how our community is a special one, how they feel love and light from it. And, oftentimes we ignore that power, and we don't give enough attention to that power of just being a good person and being supportive. So I want to say a special thank you to all of you who support the D.D. Jackson Foundation. And then also to those who donated, not only to our foundation, but to Amelia's the evening. It was very much appreciated and just something that we are all very thankful for. So, okay, Taj, I think instead of talking about our week, because that was a big thing of our week, I think the only thing we should discuss before having our wonderful guests join us is that I had just heard that Tina Turner has passed at 83. Did you know that?
I had just heard too, TJ. I hadn't gone online to confirm anything, but someone told me, texted me that.
Incredibly heartbreaking. Tina Turner is obviously an incredible legend. And I was saying earlier that a lot of people just assume Tina Turner, a lot of people my age and younger, they'll assume Tina Turner from the 80s, with What's Love Got to Do with It, without really understanding the impact and the pioneering she did with Ike and Tina Turner decades earlier. So just an incredible career, an incredible talent, and someone that should always be remembered and respected. Just obviously sending love to her family and just love and support to everyone affected by her passing. Taj, anything else you want to say before we go on with our show?
No, courtesy of Caitlin. There's our episode number right there.
There we go.
283.
17 away from 300.
Yes.
I can't believe that. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Never would have thought it would have gotten that high, but I'm happy it did. Well, that wasn't supposed to be funny.
Well, it didn't sound confident. Like never thought.
Well,
I know what you meant, but
when you start a show like this, you don't think about episode 300. You think about episode 10 or 20 or maybe 50 or maybe one day 100. 283. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, Taj, I think it's time to move on with our show.
Let's do it.
Today's episode of the Power of Love show, we welcome a special guest. Her name is Michèle. I'm gonna go for it. Michèle Saint-Michel. I may have butchered that. She told me she's prepared me, but we'll get the clear pronunciation. Michèle's an artist, filmmaker, and author. She designed to promote healing. Her genre-bending works encourage healthy coping and recovery from difficult experiences, often incorporating pressed botanicals, preserved insects, seeds, and leaves. Her works examine the overlap between the environmental, the culture, and the emotional, creating a conditional and reactive multi-temporal space where new futures can be imagined. Michèle's films take influence from poetry filmmakers, experimental filmmakers, and free jazz movements. Nice. Her moving image work and poetry films have been official selections by the Prismatic Ground Festival, Manchester International Film Festival, Cadence Poetry Film Festival, and many, many others. Her installation films have been exhibited in galleries and digital arts festivals worldwide. She's the author of not one, but 2 books, a coloring book and 3 journals. After the heartfelt reception of Grief is an Origami Swan, Michèle released the highly experimental poetry collection, Saint Agatha Mother Redeemer, and the accompanying Saint Agatha Mother Redeemer coloring book. She has also released a set of journals based on the poetry of Walt Whitman. Michèle's artistic journey has taken her from the rolling hills and river bluffs of Missouri to the bustling streets of London. She is currently pursuing an MFA in Fine Art at Goldsmiths College, University of London. Michèle's work is about creating a space where new futures can be imagined through her films. installations, and writing. She invites audiences to engage with their emotions and surroundings in a way that fosters healing and grief. Here today to discuss a bit about her work, particularly her book, Grief is an Origami Swan. Without much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michelle to the Power of Love show. Yeah. Michelle, how are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing very, very, very well. So, Michelle, before we started this show, I asked for the pronunciation of your last name, and you said you could say it the American way, which would be Saint Michel. Yeah. But then you said I believe the French way to say it was Saint Michel.
Saint-Michel, yeah.
Saint-Michel. So there's no
T.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So I almost had it.
You were so close.
So close. Well, next time.
She's being nice, TJ.
Oh, you're good. I don't mind.
I didn't even try that.
I don't mind.
However, very cool, Michelle. Well, it's so good to see you, and I thank you for joining us today. We learned from your bio that you draw a lot of inspiration for your various art mediums from other artists and the world around you. My first question to you is, what inspired you to focus some of your work around the topic of grief? And how did this inspiration lead you to bring out your book, Grief is an Origami Swan? How did it inspire you to bring it to life?
Yeah. So, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be here, y'all. And I'm an intermediate artist. So I make my work using little bits of different art practices. And I kind of weave those together to make something that makes sense for where I am at that time, right? So
very cool.
Yeah. And so I don't really go about like a filmmaker would, where they're going to have a script and a storyboard, or even an author would, where they're going to have a blueprint of the outline of a novel, right? So I get to what I'm thinking about through the act of working itself. And so at the time that I was writing Grief is an Origami Swan, well, about to, right? I didn't know it was coming. It was 2019, and I was really into Japanese design aesthetics, right? You mentioned that I take inspiration from the free jazz movement. I am obsessed with jazz, especially you're mentioning Tina Turner, the 60s. This is like the era I would go back to if I could, right?
Yeah.
And so I was looking at particularly contemporary art practices and coming out of Japan at the time. And so I had these really incredible books that were made in Japan, and I happened to get my mitts on them. And I was really inspired by the work that they were doing. It was really quiet. And so I started to look into Japanese design aesthetics on a bigger scale. And so maybe you've heard of this idea of wabi-sabi. I don't know, maybe the listeners have heard of this idea. But it's kind of this, well, if it's imperfect, it's still beautiful, right?
Ooh.
And so part of the word is this idea of wabi. And so wabi is stark beauty. It's kind of what we think of when we think about design, and something just, you see it and you think, wow, that's perfection. There's something in that that's inherently beautiful. Then we have this other idea of sabi. And sabi is the beauty that comes from aging. And so that's this idea of like patina. You know, when something's old and just gorgeous, like because of its age, right? That is that idea. And so you put this together and you get this idea of wabi-sabi. And so I was interested in this. And that kind of led me further down the road. And then I discovered this idea. It's called Ma, like M-A, like mom. And it's about the empty space having weight. So you can imagine we have a white page, a blank page. And in the center is a design or some text. right? And so some might say, well, this is just empty space. This is nothingness with a design in the middle, right? But Ma says, actually, no, this empty space that you're seeing as empty actually carries weight, right? And so you have this, I imagine maybe we'll say a black swan in the center of this like white page, right? And maybe the weights are different, right? But there is some kind of that, back to that idea of wabi, there is some kind of balance, that initial, that awe, that stark beauty in when we find the balance. And so because my dad had passed away, not too many years before it's when you have a loss, that it kind of sits maybe in your third eye, or it just, it's, how it is. It's there nowhere you look, but they're everywhere around you. Everything that you see reminds you of them. And so I think somewhere resting, maybe in my heart, was resting this heaviness from grief. And it was in November, and my dad had passed away in December. And how grief anniversaries go, right? It was like, when it's coming every year. And so you're thinking, okay, and it starts to get bigger and bigger. And as you come up to this grief anniversary, and every year it's different, of course. But I think that was on my mind. And I thought, wow, emptiness has weight. And I immediately thought of losing my father. And I thought of how, even though he wasn't there anymore, he was the heaviest thing, the weightiest thing on my mind when I moved through my life, right? And I thought, this is such a perfect kind of metaphor, allegory for grief. And maybe because all these things make sense for grief, but maybe because I was experiencing so much grief still after all that time, those things colluded to be in the backdrop of my mind when I started this project.
That's very powerful. When you're describing it, I was actually thinking similar things as a musician. There's times where you want to take instruments out or mute things to create that space. And that space, if you fill it up, it takes away, and it adds a lot of strength, even if you don't even realize it as the listener. That silence, that moment can be powerful. It's kind of like, just for any music lovers out there, Whitney Houston's the boom, when she's going in that space is so powerful. Without that space, that part wouldn't shine as much. So I love you describing. I never thought of it from a non-musical standpoint, but so it was really cool to hear. And now you got me thinking about where else can space add value, and I think it's a lot of places. So very cool. I do have a quick question for you. Origami, I've heard of that. That's an art style, right? In Japan?
Yeah. So origami is an art form. It is folding paper, square paper sheets. Yeah. And so this was, I was thinking about Japanese design aesthetics, and my friend, her daughter is in Girl Scouts. And this is something that I don't know if you all did it in Boy Scouts, if you're in Boy Scouts, but it's something that we did as Girl Scouts. We folded origami. It's kind of started as a really high art form. And now, because it's been so long, it's more of a arts and crafts thing, right? And so we do it as kids in art class or in Girl Scouts and et cetera, things like that. And so she invited me to her house, and she's like, okay, we're folding origami. And I'm like, man, I haven't done origami since I was this big, and I can't even imagine. And so you start with, I've got some sheets here.
Yes, let's see it.
You start with just a square sheet, right?
Yeah.
And we're going through the steps, and all the steps have these really interesting names like mountains and valleys and inside folds. And I was, so her daughter was 5, and I am a grown adult. And I was rubbing my last 2 brain cells together to try to get this origami folded right. But then we got there in the end. It's like this mountain. Your first piece of origami is this mountain that you do, right? You climb. And then when you get there, it's like that view. You know, when you climb the mountain and you're exhausted, but then you look up and you're like, wow, this vista, right? And so this is a finished origami swan.
So
it's
cool.
pretty, no, it's beautiful and it's delicate. And we were on the floor and we all just put our swans up on the banister. And I thought, wow, this is my friend. She had lost her mother and her father. And I had lost my father. And I thought, this is like a little paper statue, you know, a little memorial that you can kind of carry around with you. And it's paper. And so it's really kind of delicate, but it also it's strong in the way that it moves, you know. And so that's how I got that moment of aha. And I thought, this is the book.
So cool.
This is what I need to do. And this shape, the swan in particular, is the most accessible fold. So this swan, children can do it, or people with arthritis can do it. It's not that it's easy. The first time it's a challenge, but after you get it, you can kind of start to make them more intricate. Like I make them pretty fancy, I'll say.
Yeah.
That's because I've folded, you know, probably 1,000 by now.
How long does that take you?
So it's really 15 steps. And so the first time you do it, it really is going to take you maybe 15 minutes about. But after that, it takes me 6 minutes.
Wow.
Now.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
And it's really, and that is, and that's what I realized, you know, when you're sitting there and you're focusing on this one single task, it gives you an opening, because we all know how transcendent art can be, right? But we have this grief and we don't know what to do with it, right? But here we are, we can focus on this one task. For my book, I use folding origami. And as we are folding this origami, it becomes a meditation. Our mind goes somewhere else as we focus here. And if we think about or if we're kind of meditating on this person that we've lost, or just these feelings that are conflicting and difficult, it can be a way to spend time with that person, or just the feelings, the emotions that we're feeling. And really it becomes this time that I get to spend with the people I've lost. So when I'm folding a swan, it's intentional. I'm thinking of this a specific person or a specific idea just kind of in the background. And
so cool.
Yeah.
I want to show a bit of stuff for those who are watching. You can see a slide come up. It is Michele's book, Grief is an Origami Swan. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, and booksamillion.com. Paperback or Kindle, or I should say paperback and Kindle.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful cover. I love
that
the
is a beautiful cover.
Thank you.
Very,
I
very
wanted
sweet.
it to be a really quiet book. It doesn't scream grief on the cover. It doesn't have any words there at all. It's because like this idea of the wabi-sabi, when you touch the cover, it leaves a little handprint. So every time you pick it up, you know the last time you've picked it up, right? You're reminded.
I like that.
Yeah. And you want it to be, you know, passed from person to person. And so I like that idea as well.
That's really cool. I think too often we in society are trying to be perfect and clean things, and I don't want to butcher the name, the wasabi.
Wabi-sabi. Yep, you got it just right.
But that's a really cool concept that I think we can all grow from. And and become, I think it will lead to happier and more fulfilled people. So I'm going to actually do some research on not only the origami, but also some wabi-sabi. So I thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I want to mention too is that you also on your website, Michèle, I'm going to say Saint, I know, but MichelleSaintMichel.com. You also have some free printable, free origami printables. That is so cool. So, can you just talk about this for a minute as well?
Sure. So inside the book, there are these same instructions. And so the book guides you in folding your first and subsequent, if you need the instructions after, origami swans. But also, I know that it's kind of difficult to hold open a book while you're trying to fold origami, or maybe it's something that you want to share with a friend and you're not ready to share the whole book yet. And so these are printables. I've got a huge 8.5 by 11 sheet, like a full-size sheet that you can print out that's free, that's got all the steps, the same steps from the book. Also have a smaller version that's more for an iPad, but gorgeous, something nice to look at that you can have as you're folding. And then additionally for teachers, I have a 20-page lesson plan. That's a resource that they can use in the classroom if they wanted to use my book in the classroom. I'm in touch with a lot of counselors and teachers, and they're always looking for resources. And so I wanted to make that available. And, teachers don't need to pay for another thing. So I made it available to all the teachers on there for free. Absolutely.
Ben says swans are beautiful. Lala Chan says very interesting. And Jack Love says, I love that. I wish I knew how to do origami. And then our one and only Amelia Green, yes, who we were talking about earlier, I love this picture too, Amelia, in her custom dress that thank you to Paul and Taj, why did I do that? But they just,
oh my God. That? No, I'm trying to think of the name too.
But
oh my gosh.
They designed the beautiful dress for Amelia. So, but anyway, Amelia says, love this. I have folded 342 swans since March 2021.
Wow.
It's really cool.
That's really cool.
Okay, I have a question for you, Michèle.
Yes.
Did writing this book change at all the way or just aid you in your own grief? And I'm talking about more the writing of the book.
Yeah. So the book is very, after I've experienced almost every single loss, I get terrible, what I like to call grief brain, but it is this kind of brain fog that it makes concentrating on things extremely difficult. So I wanted to make this book easy. I wanted to make it so you could get through it. You can read the whole thing in about 15 minutes. I have people that tell me that they read it before they go to sleep because it's really validating, right? But I will also tell you that I don't really remember writing it. I know that sounds wild, but it was like, it's so silly, but it's like a muse came and helped me write this. And maybe it's because it's really short, but I just, in a frenzy, just wrote it all over a couple days and added in a little bit of an arc. So there is it's not really a narrative story or anything, but there is this moment of kind of of climax that you would get in a regular book. And yeah, and I don't, it has aided me, not in the writing of it, but in other people's reading of it. So when people come to me and they say, I read your book and I wish somebody would have told me these things 10 years ago, right? when people tell me things like that, I feel tremendously validated, because when you're releasing a book, you're kind of daring and putting something out, or even music, when you release your art, it really,
you're vulnerable, and you're sharing your most, especially your difficult moments, to the world, and it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
Did you have any reservations about sharing it publicly?
This was my very first book. There was a worldwide pandemic. I was pretty afraid. I wanted to have a big release, and we couldn't because of the panny. So I had an online, like a virtual release, and book signing, And so
cool.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was an experience, but I wasn't afraid to release it. But I was absolutely in that releasing anything out into the world is like letting your baby go,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Taj, were you going to ask something or no?
You kind of covered it. Yeah,
Okay.
I was just wondering, in terms of like the did you have any reservations in terms of creating the book in that way? Or I shouldn't say reservations. Was there a calling? Because you said that it came, like, as you were writing, it came natural, and you don't even remember writing it. Was it an urge to write this, or how was that in that way?
Yeah, it absolutely was. It felt like I was on fire. It was like, I have to do this, and I have to do this quick, right? It seemed urgent.
Okay.
And whenever something comes to me, any of my projects feel like, fire, then absolutely I pay attention, because you don't get that all the time, right?
I think that's important to say, and important for people to remember. If you have that gut feeling, or that true love to, or passion to do something, you got to do it.
Nudge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Push to do something. Yeah.
The reviews of your book are quite rave. I want to read one reader's review. They say, an utterly beautiful, heartbreaking, yet fulfilling guide to recovery. Each page is impeccable put together. The words and images are indescribably evocative. Both the art and the pressed flowers, the origami, are all poetry in their own right. I cried, I smiled, I dreamed. It was truly a surprising, wonderful experience. I strongly recommend this to anyone who may have lost someone dear in your life, regardless of who or what the relationship was. That's when you hear that kind of praise about your book, Michelle, that has to bring you so much joy and so much what's the word? I guess fulfillment, but so much also purpose. When you read reviews like that, and people, I know you touched on it when people say stuff, but does it make all the hard work? Because I know, writing and releasing a book is not easy. Forget about the topic, just the whole process is kind of scary. And for you to do that, you gotta feel really good when you hear those kind of reviews.
Yes, it's hugely rewarding. You can't imagine that you get a review that you resonate so well with somebody, that you can connect with somebody so deeply. Grief feels so personal, and it's so unique. But there's this quote that says, the most personal is actually the most universal. And so I take that to heart when I create my work. And it does give me a little solace in creating something that feels really personal, because I think, you know what? If it's so personal, other people are feeling it too. Even though, like you said, feeling this loneliness that often comes with grief and loss, it is, profound sometimes, right? And so this ability to connect with others, I mean, it's incredibly humbling. For one, I feel a little embarrassed about it, because I'm just like, wow, that is, such a thoughtful, generous critique of this book.
So, and then with your book, and obviously there's other grief resources on the market. The question I want to ask you, which we ask a lot of our guests, do you feel like the tide is turning regarding the stigma surrounding talking about grief, or even, do you feel because I've always said this, when when my mother passed, there was just not much out there, and people, it was
Yeah.
like a
No.
hush word, and you just kind of went to your own corner to get better, or but now it feels like it's a lot more out there, thanks to people like you and your book and resources. So do you feel like it's becoming more normalized in society to talk about our grief openly, and do you feel the stigma around it surrounding grief is slowly going away?
I do feel like the tide is turning. And even when I first experienced my first major um, kind of grief experience, maybe it was 2015.
Hmm.
I think even then, the change from then to now has been huge. You see it on Instagram. There's just so many people in what
Yeah.
maybe some will call the grief space, but there's so many people kind of talking about grief. And the more that we talk about it, it lessens that taboo. And that's what people need, is validation.
Yep.
Because when we keep these feelings in, they come out in other ways that we don't want them to, or they become internalized. And then we are becoming self destructive. And, what we really need is just somebody to say, it's okay,
Mm.
or someone to listen, or someone to validate our feelings, like what you're going through makes sense. And yeah, I'm so thankful that it really is changing, because I think, your work, my work, every little drop in the ocean is helping raise the
Absolutely.
tide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So true.
Her name is Michèle Saint-Michel. The book is called Grief is an Origami, Swan. And then again, available on Amazon, Barnes& Nobles, bookshop.org, booksamillion.com, paperback and Kindle. But then she also, as we mentioned before, has this um, on her website. It's free printable pages, 10-page origami swan how to, for anyone wanting to start or to learn about the origami experience. A quick question: why was it important for you to offer this as a free resource for your audience? I'm not complaining. I think it's amazing that you are, and I thank you for providing this for anyone out there who's grieving. But I'd love to hear from your words and your voice why you decided to do this as a free resource for the community.
Sure. I think accessibility is so important.
Yeah.
And, my book, if you've seen it, it's not inexpensive, and I know that, but it's printed with really high quality ink. And because of that, because it is an art book, it's more. And so obviously, I wish I could just give every book away, but the printing cost is really high. And so I want there to be, maybe you have a book and you share it between a friend, or you have the book and you keep it in rotation and you give it to people along the way, right? That's kind of how I want it to go. We have, for me, it's a part of my mission that we have to create work that's accessible. And if that means making some free options, I'm absolutely going to do that.
Michelle, before first of all, Taj, do you have anything? Are you good? I want to make sure I'm not cutting you off.
No, I'm good. Right.
Okay.
For now.
For now. Okay, there's still some time. Michelle, I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you or to follow you. And this is kind of a pre-warning to the final word that I mentioned before going on, that we like to do, where our guests get the final word. So I know we have your website, Michèle Saint-Michel. That's MICHELESAINTMICHEL.com. Yeah, I like to spell it in case people are listening on podcasts. Trust me, I listen to podcasts and it's like, I don't know how to spell that. So there you go. That was a spelling for it. But you can also find you on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
These are both at Grief Swan and at Michèle Saint-Michel.
Yes.
What are the difference between your two Instagram profiles?
Sure. So at Grief Swan, we're focusing strictly on grief.
Okay.
Sometimes that's a little much for people.
Mhm.
And so, but sometimes it's exactly what you want and need. So I have that as an option where it's more of a community where people can talk about their grief specifically. And then at Michèle Saint-Michel, I am sharing all of the myriad things I'm doing. So I'm doing sound work. Sometimes I'm doing films. I'm doing books. I'm doing art installations in the States and in the UK. And so I'm sharing all of those with people. And my Instagram, people really like my kind of experimental videos on there. And so that's what and a lot of experimental music. And so over there, you'll kind of get that flavor on Michèle Saint-Michel.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then on Facebook as well, Michèle Saint-Michel.
Yep.
She's on Facebook as well. Okay, Michèle, it is that time where we like to give a final word, or I should say, leave the final words with our guest. Anything you want to talk about could be on topic, could be off topic, really completely up to you. It could be about future projects you have. It could be about something you heard years ago that impacted you. Anything you want to talk about and leave our community with, please do so whenever you're ready.
Thanks. Because I think the people tuning in are thinking about grief a lot, I just want to share and say that your grief is valid. It is. It doesn't make sense a lot of times. It's complicated. It comes and goes as it pleases, and making space for that is a way to honor your own journey. It's a way to really almost believe in yourself and give yourself the grace that you would give another person, because of course you would, right? And finding ways to validate all your feelings, but especially your grief, because we all know that it is still a taboo subject, even if it is changing. It is just a gift that you can give yourself.
Beautifully said. I love that. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Michèle, I want to thank you on behalf again of my eldest brother Taj, as well as our entire foundation and the community who is watching and listening. We here at the D.D. Jackson Foundation Power of Love Show love to give people like you a voice and to make sure we're spreading what you are doing to as many people as possible. So again, on behalf of all of us, we just want to thank you for putting your heart into your projects and doing your thing.
Yes.
One more thing I want to say, or just remind everyone, the book is called Grief is an Origami Swan. It's by Michèle Saint-Michel, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, Books A Million. And then if you also want to try origami swams for your grief, it helps with grief, you could do so at her website, michellesaintmichel.com. There's 10 printable pages, and you can be off on your origami swan journey. I think that is it. Taj, did I forget anything? I think I nailed everything.
No, I just think it's amazing because, with all these guests, and thank you so much for coming on. We've realized there's so many different ways to deal with your grief in that way. And also as someone, and as I said, thank you for coming on, but people transform that grief into various things in that way. We dived into music, you wrote a book in that way, and an incredible book. And I just think that that's something I would probably, with anything that you do and the hardship, you can not turn it around, because it's not like it just flips around in a corner, but you do have a story to tell, whether it's music, whether it's a book, whether it's something, whether it's art or anything. It's like there is something in that grief that can, you can transform it into something that helps others, as you mentioned. In that's the greatest gift, is seeing other people identify in that way with what your words were.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right, we are going to sign off, but before we do, I made a little blunder, or I should say, I couldn't remember his name, and I want to let everyone know it was Paul and Patrick. That's who made Amelia's
Was it
dress.
Patrick? I was
Patrick, yes, Patrick Taj. There you go, Big Brother saving the day. But Amelia's dress she's wearing was designed for her by Paul and Patrick. And Amelia says, "Hey, family, hugging you from New York." Yes, you are family, Amelia. Big hug back to you. But okay, that is it for us. Michelle, I want to thank you again. I was going to say, is there anything else you wanted to share? But I think you covered it, right? Did I give you that opportunity? Anything else you want to share before we close it?
No, I mean, yeah, if you can order my book, I'm super grateful. And, you know, it's meant to be shared hand to hand. So if you get a copy, get a second copy if you like it, and give it to a friend, because you will create this shared vocabulary and you'll be able to really talk about something in a way that maybe you hadn't been able to before. And so I really encourage you, if you're hurting, to reach out, and maybe my book would be a great place to start.
Love it. We'll end it with that.
Yes.
Everyone, thank you again for watching, for listening. We will be back next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please be safe. God bless you all, and adios, everyone.